Hello, YouTube Pipers. It's Double O Pipe, aka Rick. I've been trying to, well, first off, let me say I'm smoking my Savinelli Clark's Favorite with some velvet in it. And I've been trying to make this video for some time because it's one that's important to me. Because there's an important portion of it that I have to get right before I can pass it on. But I haven't been able to do that. So I have to keep trying. Today's not the day I'm going to do it. Because I just haven't got it all fixed in my mind yet. It's a memory from long ago when I was 5 years old, and the things that were said between my mother and me were things that were too important to get flubbed up. So I'm going to have to go back and think about it some more before I can talk about that one. But it was a very important memory. It's about my dad, my mother, and me. A young couple, been married for 8 years. And I would think that's about when the troubles begin. And my dad, who was a limey and didn't have any training in anything other than what he had learned in the Navy, came to America December of '49 to complete a promise he had made to my mother that he would bring her back to the United States when the war was over. But there were problems between them during that time. He was trying to earn a living, he was trying to learn a new job, and he was working at night. And my mother, Lord love her, was the most loving woman I've ever known. Ever will know, probably. But they had to fight this particular day I'm thinking of. And my dad stormed out of the house. Stormed out of the house. Tore out of the driveway in this old jalopy he had bought. That was his means of transportation back and forth to work. And my mother went to the back room, closed the door, and was crying. Now, all this time, I had been playing. But when I heard my dad angry like that, I just tried to stay away from him because he kind of scared me. Well, I heard the crying, and I was kind of mystified by it because, well, I went back and knocked on the door, and I said, "Mommy, are you okay?" And she said, she didn't say anything for a minute, but got quiet. The sniffling stopped. And she said, "Yes, yes, honey, I'm fine. You go back and play. I'll be out in just a minute." Well, she came out, and I looked at her and I said, "Why were you crying, Mommy?" I thought only boys and girls my age cried. And she said, "No, sometimes adults cry. Your father and I had a bit of a quarrel, and he left. He was angry, and it just made me cry." I said, "Well, he's mean." And she said, "No, he's not really mean, Ricky. He just has a lot on his shoulders, and a lot comes from his childhood." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, he lived in England, and his childhood was not the best. His family wasn't quite like my family. I grew up on a farm, and we knew that everybody was loved, and we had enough for all of us, even during the bad time they called the Depression. But his life was harder than that. His family didn't show emotion. They had that stiff British upper lip. And they may have loved each other, but they never, ever said anything. And he got many a whipping for the things that he did. He was growing up in a house with 3 sisters, and he had a hard life." I said, "My dad got whippings?" She said, "Sure did." "Like he gives me?" She said, "No, nothing like you got." "He's very sparing with whipping you, but the ones he got were terrible. It's a wonder." Anyway, she said, "So our lives were so different. Here was a man who was English, had a very Victorian upbringing because his mother was very strict, very religious, and things were just so, and that's the way it was. With me, everybody was very loving. We knew that we belonged to a loving family. We had enough for everything we needed, and I was always very happy." So it's 2 different people. Married, trying to get along. I said, "Well, why is he so mean?" And she said, "Your daddy's really not mean. He's just having some problems. And I may be contributing to them." She said, it's hard for a person who's always known love, felt love, and given love to deal with someone who's very self-contained, not willing to give much. It's just hard. And I spent a lot of time trying to change him." She said, "And that doesn't work." And I learned that the hard way. She said it helped me to understand what God meant for us in this world, because I prayed for many a night that I could change him to make him into a happy person. And instead of making him a happy person, that put pressure on him, which made him very unhappy. So I prayed, asking, what can I do? And the answer came to me, and he told me that it's not my place to change somebody else. It's my place to change myself. And by doing that, perhaps in his life he would change some. Well, she said, I prayed about that a lot. And I prayed and asked him, since I realized it was impossible to make somebody else happy, and to pray that God would change them to be happy, because that's not my place. So I prayed after that, after realizing what he had made apparent to me. I prayed that he would change me and to fill my heart with the love he had for your daddy, so that I would have that love for your daddy. And I said, well, what happened today? And she said, well, you can pray for something, and you can know that that is something he is going to help you with, but it's not something that's overnight. And we just had another argument over nothing. And I must have hit some points with him that hurt him. And he just couldn't deal with it, and he had to leave. But that's how I have begun to work on it. It's not something that changes overnight within myself, she said. It's something that's an ongoing thing. It takes time, because what I have tried to do is change him through force, my own force. And it was just causing problems. So I've turned it over to God and asked him to change me. And there are times when I rebel against the changes, because I'm human like anybody else. But I know that he is working on my heart, and I know that he loves your dad, and I know that he is changing my heart and filling my heart with the love that he feels for your dad. And I'm thanking him for that. And with time, things will become better. But we still have our problems, and we will have our problems for a while, because it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So we live, we learn, and your dad will be back, because this small trivial thing that we fought about will pass, and that rock solid love that he has for you and me, and that love that I have for him, will continue to work on us to bring us together through our lives. And I don't know that I really understood what she was saying at the time. And I don't know that I've gotten it quite the way that she expressed it back then, but this is essentially what she was saying, that it's not our place to try to change somebody else. It's our place and our position with God to deal with ourselves, to bring out the best that we can through His help, and in that way deal with the situation that's between you. I think I just burned my tongue. And she looked at me and she said, "I don't know that you understand what I'm saying to you." I said, "I'm not really sure I do either, Mommy, but I hope he comes back in a better mood." And she said, "He'll be back, and we'll work through this, and everything will be all right. And you always should know that He loves you with all His heart. Sometimes His heart is so full of love, He doesn't know how to deal with it. And every time that you were talking about spankings, every time He gives you a spanking, He hates doing that." I said, yeah, sure He does, because He's always saying, "This is going to hurt me more than it does you," and that ain't true. Because I'm the one with the sore rear end. And she said, "One day you'll understand what He means by that, because He does hate punishing you, but He wants you to stop and look at what you've done and realize that some things that you do have consequences. So He's just doing His best to bring you up in a way that you can see how to deal with life. So don't you think He doesn't love you, because He does. He loves you and He loves me very much, or He never would have brought us back to live here away from everything that He knew, to come to a country where He is discriminated against because of his accent. He's called a limey. And he's part of a whole new family that he doesn't understand. Because my family is outgoing and loving, and he knew a family that was withdrawn and pushing through just to make it, without too many signs of loving care. It's just you do your part to deal with what we have to do in order to survive. So he's got a lot to contend with. And I don't help sometimes, because I still lose lose myself in the things that I want. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is don't think he doesn't love you, because he does very much. She said, why don't you go play again and I'll go over here and fix us some lunch. And I said, okay, Mommy. So I went over to play, but I watched her going up to the stove and realized that her heart was more full of love than anybody I'd ever known. And looking back, I have always said that I know that Jesus walked this earth and he preached the word and he told people to love one another. And my mother took that to heart, and it changed her into the most loving person I have ever known. And anybody you meet that knew her would tell you the same thing. So I have proof that Jesus Christ changes hearts. She prayed for that, and she got that. And there isn't a soul that ever met her that wouldn't believe that. She was the most loving person I've ever known. And I am ever grateful that I had both my dad, who I learned a lot from, and a mother that I learned the deeper spiritual things that I needed to know. She was a very strong person. She was 4'11", 18 years old when she got married. She didn't know how to cook, and when Dad came back from the war for 2 weeks, she fed him tomato sandwiches. Because she didn't know how to cook. And he would never touch a tomato, and he would never touch mayonnaise for the rest of his life. Oh, jeepers. But I'll tell you what, over the years, my mother learned to cook, and she was the best cook that I ever knew. She was better than her mother. But that's one of those family stories you hear about, that tomato sandwiches for 2 weeks. I don't know if I told this the way I should have or not, but I just wanted to get that across, what she told me, that the Lord made it clear in her heart that you don't try to change somebody else. You change yourself and trust God. And I guess that's as much as I want to say. Other than try a tomato sandwich with some mayonnaise. My dad did eat tomato sandwiches, but he would never allow her to put mayonnaise on it. It always had to be with butter. He hated mayonnaise so bad. All right, folks. I'm going to let you go now. I've been yapping on. Take care of yourselves. God bless you till the next time. Bye.